Next episode in the memorabilia I want to particularly underline and dwell on is the charming dialogue that occurred one day between Socrates and the courtesan or Hetaira Theodote. I'm simply not sure why this episode is not more frequently underlined in introductory lectures to Socrates, for it seems to be the parallel in the Socratic legacy of Jesus' close relationship to women such as Mary Magdalene. Xenophon recounts, "At one time there was in the city a beautiful woman called Theodote, who was of the sort to consort with anyone persuasive. One of the company had mentioned her and remarked that her beauty was beyond description. He added that artists visited her to paint her picture and that she let them see as much of her as was proper, perhaps an indication that that was quite a lot. We ought to go and see her, said Socrates. We can't form a clear idea about what is beyond description from hearsay, now can we?" A very human Socrates here, who as much as any man appreciates the sight of a beautiful woman. So off they went to Theodote and found her posing for a painter, and they took a good look at her. When the painter had finished, Socrates said, "Gentlemen, ought we to be more grateful to Theodote for letting us see her beauty, or she to us for looking at her? I suggest that, if the display has been more to her advantage, she ought to be grateful to us, and if the sight has been more to ours, we ought to be grateful to her." Seriously, what a funny thing to say. And how do you think Theodote replied? With all the modesty and circumspection of an important Hetaira, of course, completely agreeing with Socrates. "Well then," he went on, "she is already enjoying the tribute of our admiration, and when we have spread our report, she will benefit still further. On the other hand, we are now desirous of touching what we have seen. We shall go away with our emotions titillated, and when we have gone, we shall feel an unsatisfied longing. The natural inference from this is that we are performing the service and she is receiving it." Again here, a very playful and flirtatious Socrates seems to be an expert at talking with everyone and perfectly plays Theodote's own game along with her. "I must say," said Theodote, "if that's how it is, I shall have to be grateful to you for looking at me." "Tell me, Theodote," he replies, "have you got a farm?" "Not I," she said. "Well then, a house that brings in money?" "Nor a house." "Perhaps you have some slaves who work at a craft?" "No, none." "Then how do you support yourself?" "If anyone gets friendly with me and wants to be generous, that's how I get my living," she replies. "Good heavens, Theodote," said Socrates. "It's a splendid asset to have a flock of friends, much better than having a flock of sheep and goat and cattle. But tell me, do you leave it to chance whether a friend wings his way towards you like a fly, or do you devise something yourself to catch the friend?" "How could I find a device to bring that about?" she asked. "You could do it much more naturally than a spider. You know how spiders hunt to support themselves. They spin webs and feed on anything that flies into them. Are you advising me to weave some kind of snare too?" she asked. "No, you mustn't expect to hunt friends, who are the most valuable prey of all, as simply as that." "Well," said Theodote, "what method might I use to catch friends?" "Surely by providing yourself with a human hound, who will track down men of wealth and good taste, and after finding them, divine a means of driving them into your nets." "Nets," said she, "what nets have I got?" Notice here a couple of things. One is Socrates' penchant for animal metaphors. Describing himself as a gadfly elsewhere in many places, he here describes the courtesan as a spider. What is more, within this playful dialogue, he seems to offer his own services as a pimp, graciously understanding Theodote's plight and suggesting she could use a man like him to bring her the most desirable client friends. What sort of nets does Theodote have? "One certainly," said Socrates, "which is very close in folding, your body. And in it is your mind, which teaches you how to look charming and talk gaily, and tells you that you must give a warm welcome to an attentive lover, but bolt the door against a selfish one, that if a lover falls ill, you must look after him devotedly, that if he has a stroke of luck, you must share his pleasure enthusiastically, and that if he cares for you deeply, you must gratify him wholeheartedly. As for loving, I am sure that you know how to love not only passively, but with real affection, and you convince your lovers that you are fond of them, I know, not by words, but by deeds." It's almost as if Socrates is trying to convince Theodote to give up her spiritually poor clientele, but rather to cultivate fewer lovers of higher quality, along with all that would be involved in that. Approaching matters in this way seems to have honestly not occurred to Theodote yet. I don't use any of those methods. Then again, said Socrates, it's much better to keep one's human relationships natural and right. You can't capture or keep a friend by force, but by showing the creature kindness and giving it pleasure, you can both catch it and keep it. That's true, she said. So Socrates' advice to Theodote is basically care for the people who care for you. Satisfy them when it's little trouble, cultivate attachment from your clients, but also lead them on a bit, accentuate their appetites, and arouse their hunger for what you have to give. It seems here in this charming dialogue with the courtesan that Socrates' intention, like elsewhere, is sincere and helpful. And he goes on just a bit more, turning up the heat a bit. Why surely, said Socrates, if when your admirers are satiated, you neither offer nor hint at your favors until the satisfaction has passed, and they feel the want again, and next, when they most feel the want, if you drop hints by a combination of the most modest behavior and obviously wanting to gratify them, and by obviously holding back until their need is as great as possible, for the same favors are much better then than before the desire for them is aroused. Theodote, why don't you help me in my hunt for friends, Socrates? So Socrates gets the job. I will, believe me, if you persuade me. Classic Socratic irony. Theodote, how can I persuade you? Uh-oh, where's this going? You'll look at that yourself, he said, and you'll find a way if you need any help from me. Then come and see me often, she said. Clearly, Socrates has won a very fun new friend. But instead of taking her up on her very noble offer, Socrates, playing classic hard to get, well, Theodote, replied Socrates, poking fun at his own avoidance of public life, it's not very easy for me to find the time for it. I have a great deal of private and public business that keeps me occupied, but I have some girlfriends too, who will never let me leave them by day or night, because they are learning from me about love charms and spells. Do you really know about those things too? She asked. Why do you suppose that Apollodorus here and Antisthenes never leave me, and that Cebes and Simmias come to visit me from Thebes? You may be sure that these things don't happen without a lot of love charms and spells and magic wheels. Socrates here indicating that his privileged disciples as well learn as much about the arts of love from him as about philosophy. Lend me your magic wheel then, so that I may spin it first for you, replies Theodote, now here of course completely won over. Certainly not, he said. I don't want to be drawn to you. I want you to come to me. Very well, I will, she declared. Only mind you let me in. Yes, I'll let you in, said Socrates, unless I have someone with me that I like better. What an absolutely charming end to a very charming conversation. It makes me blush a bit to recount it, but certainly I admire Socrates no less after reading it